Hello and welcome everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at rebuilding the Keychron V1 with a different mounting style and bringing out some of the sound profiles that I actually enjoy. Now if you recall, the last time when we showcased the Keychron V1, we built it with Gateron Milky Yellows and topped it with some keycaps from KP Republic, and if you recall, the sound was kind of not amazing. Now, with that being said, we want to try to clean this up, and I did mention something about stack mounting. Well, what you see before you is a modified case for the Keychron V1 and some slight modifications that have been done to the PCB assembly to try to get a sound that is more uniform and deeper sounding. Many of you are familiar with this, and that is the PE foam mod. And actually, let me take this apart here and show you what I've done with the PE foam. So here you see the PE foam sheet there, and what that does is that gives us a more poppy sort of sound and a more uniform sort of sound, and really helps eliminate a very high-pitched clack that you can tend to get with some switches. And that's what we experienced when we built it with the Milky Yellows. So one of the biggest things that I want to take a look at is, as you can see, I've removed all the screws and they're no longer burger mounted, because I did a modification that while in its current state is kind of crude. You can clean it up a little bit, but as you can see, I have taken some side cutters and I have removed all the standoffs in here. And the reason I've done this is because we're going to be stack mounting this, as I had discussed. Now, I did find that these little pieces, and I've actually got to clean this one off real quick. There we go. But I have found that these little ridges here don't really interfere with the way the PCB sits in here, but they are going to elevate the material that we use for the stack mounting. If you really want to take this to the next level, you can remove these ribbings and have a nice flat platform to work with, and then you can cut your foams accordingly. So let me show you what I decided to do. Now, I'm not aiming for flex with this particular stack mount. I'm aiming for sound isolation. Because the USB is on the PCB itself and it's not on a daughter board, I want to make sure that we're not flexing too much, potentially breaking that off in some way. So what I've done is I've cut two pieces of material here. On the top here we have a 1.5 mm thick piece of neoprene. And then I've been experimenting a little bit with felt. So this is a piece of felt that's about the same thickness, and I have cut it to sit in between these posts here because that is where the screws pass through. And then we take the neoprene and put it in right there. Now what this allows us to do is this now sits on this bed of foam, and then once we tighten down the top, it creates a sandwich. So it's essentially, it's kind of like a sandwich mount, but it's stack mount because we're technically using foams as the base for the board. Now what I wanted to do was potentially put something here to help isolate the board contact, or sorry, the plate contact to the top of the case. But you know, there's little slots in here, so it's not flat really. So the only way I really feel that I could make that work would be to kind of jankify it a little bit. So what I'm doing right now is we're just having it sit on top of the plate. But you know, because there's screws that go around the entire perimeter, it screws down fairly tightly, and I don't feel like a lot of that resonates into the top case. But I do want to take a look at that on my own later and see if it actually makes a difference. I just wasn't really sure how to execute that, and I was pretty happy with the results as is. So let's go ahead and get this guy screwed back together, and I'll show you the rest of what we did to kind of change the sound profile and make it a more ideal experience. And there you have it. Now, what I want to show you is the aesthetic of the back. I thought it came out pretty clean. You can kind of see the nubs a little bit where they were trimmed off. There's an easy fix for that, providing you have the appropriate tools. The first thing you would want to do is you want to utilize a file or some sandpaper to kind of smooth that out. This was just a rough cut for proof of concept. But you can clean that up with some sandpaper, and then I usually follow it up with a little bit of acetone on the end of a Q-tip, which I did kind of here. I just didn't take the time to file them down. So they're not as prevalent as they were when they were first clipped. And what that does is it gets that like white residue where the friction took place and the plastic was clipped. So if you sand that off first and then hit it with some acetone, it'll clean it up nice and neat. It's a technique that we use when working on Game Boys. With transparent shells. So let's get this on here. Oh yeah, and the cream sodas came in, so stay tuned for a video on that. If you want to see what these are all about, be sure to subscribe to the content so that way you'll get notified when the video about these goes live. And I just realized I goofed, so let me take a step back on that. And we'll come back in a second with tape mod. All right, here we are with the tape. I'm gonna put 2 layers of tape on here to kind of lower that pitch down and make it a little bit more uniform so that sound can travel into the case. We can kind of get that deep thuddy sound. Even though we're using Milky Yellows, it's gonna still give us that clack, and it's gonna give me that deep clack sound that I really enjoy. Tape mod is very simple. I tend to just some people will clip the tape to the size of the board, but I like to just come along and put my layers of tape. I always overlap just a smidge. And then I'll come along and I will trim the edges right here with a pair of scissors or a craft knife. So let's go ahead and finish this up. Alright, and that's our tape mod done. I like to just go along the rows here and just kind of push it down over the hot swap sockets a little bit. I have not really tested whether or not that affects the sound too much, whether it being pressed down between the rows or just floating freely. Pop her back in here. I'm going to finish assembling this, and then I'll talk about what switches we're going to be utilizing in this board. So see you on the flip side. All right, there we go. This is all back together. It's nice and tight. Doesn't sound super hollow. Actually has a little bit more heft added to it, even though we just put a little tiny bit of extra weight in it. I also did kind of tune the stabs a little bit to make sure that they're not ticky, because let's be honest, I forgot to tune the stabs in the original sound test and it sounded pretty not amazing. So let's go ahead and talk about the switches. Today we're going to be using Milky Yellows. We're going to be using the same switches that we were using before, but the difference is these guys are lubed. And I took the time to lube these switches. And this is just a quick lube job where I did not film and I lubed only the stems. And you know, it actually did make a world of difference. So that paired with the modifications that we've done really helped this board a lot. So let's go ahead and get these switches popped into this keyboard. There we go. Got all of our switches in there. Got a very Batman looking board. But we're gonna change that. Now, before we used black on black style keycaps that we got again from KB Republic, but NovelKeys just had a great sale, and there are a few sets that I wanted to pick up. And one of the sets I wanted to pick up, I wanted to use on something but wasn't sure what. And when I got the V1, it just made sense. And when they went on sale, it made even more sense. So I give you NovelKeys Cherry Charcoal. So we're going to be topping this board with these Cherry Charcoal keycaps. And I expect we're going to hear a much better sound, at least from the ones that I have sampled. So give me just a moment to get this guy open, and we'll get some keycaps on here. Now these NovelKeys trays are pretty awesome. They come with foam in between the layers. They come with these nice little trays. The individually done keycaps are not my favorite, but you know, they're very nice trays regardless to keep your keycaps really, you know, tidy and organized. So let's go ahead and start loading some keycaps up on this bad boy. And there we go. I'm just gonna top her with our knob. And she's all built. So why don't I get this mess cleaned up and we'll check out the sound test and come back and talk about the changes that we've made to the board and whether or not it was worth the time, the effort, and the added expense. So I'll see you on the other side. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that is worlds better. Worlds better. And the added cost was not much. I mean, if we think about the cost of the keycaps, if you can catch those keycaps on sale again, you're looking at a $20 difference, plus maybe a couple dollars worth of lube, especially if you've got lube laying around already from other builds. And then the foams, you know, you can pick those up, rolls of this stuff and packs of this stuff for, you know, 20 bucks. So you're adding maybe $30, $40 to the cost of the entire build. But again, it is worlds different. As far as like any added flexiness, because of the thickness of the felt and the foam that was used, didn't add any additional flexiness. You might be able to get some additional flexiness out of it if you trim those ribbings and then you use pour-on or you use the 2 sheets of neoprene. Now, I really don't think that's something that I would advise, simply due to the fact that your USB here and your dip switch for your mode switch are right here, and you know that's just kind of asking for trouble if you've put too much flex in it. So I did it for isolation. Another step that I would add in the future is maybe where the board touches the PCB in these different places and around the edge, I would probably use some electrical tape and kind of bridge that gap and create this isolation layer. But I mean, I find that it's pretty much unnecessary. I think this was well worth the time, well worth the extra expenditure. I think what we have now is, honestly, in ways, I think I enjoy this more than my Keychron Q1. You know, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's a plastic chassis. But you know, I tend to like both plastic and metallic chassis. So I don't know, I think this sounds really good. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments. If you guys built the V1 and you did any heavy mods to it, tell us a little bit about it. Give us some insight on what you did and what your experiences were. Got a couple of fun videos coming up here in the near future. Gonna shift off some of these budget boards for a little bit and go into budget premium, if you will. I've got an Icky 68 that we're going to take a look at, Zoom 65 Olivia edition, but next week we're going to have a very special build and a discussion video about these switches. And again, these are the Gateron Cream Sodas. I already did a introduction video on these, so if you're curious what these are exactly, you can check out that video. But in short, they are ink bottoms, milky tops, and a long pull stem. Now, I actually I just got these in before the video. I haven't had a chance to break one of these open just yet. So I'm pretty excited after this. I'm gonna take a look at it, and I will have a video with a lube sound test, a factory lube sound test, and then another video that showcases the switches themselves. And then there will also, that video will be the same. And then the second video will be on a very special board that I've had sitting here for many months. And I've been dying to build it. I've already done some work to it, but been waiting for these to come in to kind of complete that vibe. But anyway, thanks as always, everyone, for hanging out with me. I'm really happy with the way this came out. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys enjoyed the insight on some of the modding. I know some of you really liked the JJK 8.4 O-ring mod that we did. But yeah, as always, thanks guys for hanging out. And until next time, y'all have a good one.